Hello, and welcome to this latest podcast from the Retail Energy Code. My name's Paul Rocke, and I'm the Head of Communications for the Rec Code Manager team. I'm delighted to be joined today by Caroline Freimuller, one of the Senior Change Analysts in our Rec Change team. Caroline is going to be speaking to us about a joint information request, which is open for comments until early December. Now, the issues in scope of the request will likely be of particular interest to meter asset providers and meter operator agents. We're talking about I0230, that's the D303 flow following MHHS design changes, and I0261, that's the addition of the export flag in the D303 flows. Caroline, welcome to the podcast. Before we get into the detail, I wonder if you could provide listeners with an understanding of what the intent of an information request is and why it's different from an impact assessment or a consultation, perhaps the steps at which many stakeholders are most used to providing their input.
Thanks, Paul. Impact assessments often come in the middle of the change process. They're when we have an idea of a solution and we're asking stakeholders for their comments on that solution, but also confirmation on how it's likely to impact them, whether that be to their processes, financially, or impacts on their consumers that we haven't identified. Whereas consultations are right at the end of the process. The solution is close to finalised, we're asking one more time for comments, but also for input on our proposed implementation timelines and approach. In contrast, an information request normally comes right at the beginning of a change process, often when we need something from stakeholders to either help us come up with or progress the right solution. This could be asking stakeholders to provide us with some data that we can't get from any central sources, or in the case of this information request, we've got several potential solution options and we're asking stakeholders for their help in identifying which is the best option for them.
Brilliant, thanks Caroline, that's really useful clarification. Now, let's talk about these two issues on the table. Tell me, why are these issues important for MOAs and maps? What are the problems that we're looking to solve?
So, as you said, we're looking at I0230, which is the D303 flow following MHHS design changes, and I0261, which is the addition of export flag in the D303 flow, which are both issues that have been raised by meter asset providers or MAPs. And they're great examples of how the REC can impact market participants that aren't directly parties to the REC. So, to provide some background, the D303 flow is sent from meter operator agents, or MOAs, to MAPs, either on a switch or when a metering asset has been changed, to let them know what meter is associated with what MPAN and which energy supplier is responsible for it. One data item within this D303 flow is the energy supplier effective from date, allowing the MAP to know which energy supplier to invoice for the meters that MAP is responsible for. Market-wide half-hourly settlement, or MHHS, made changes to this data item, moving it from mandatory to optional, as the MOA now often doesn't receive this energy supplier effective from date and cannot populate it to pass it on to the MAPs. And this is causing problems for MAPs knowing which energy supplier to invoice, and is why they raised this REC issue. The second issue seen by MAPs is when a D303 flow is received with a meter serial number and that meter serial number is already attached to another MPAN, they need to manually check this to see if it's correcting what MPAN the meter is attached to, or whether it's the same meter across two MPANs. For example, one MPAN is the import and one is the export, and so no action needs to be taken. So I0261 has been raised to help reduce this manual workload for MAPs.
Fantastic. What approach are we as the code manager taking to find the resolution for these problems?
So as these issues involve the same data flow and the same parties, we are investigating whether there might be one solution out there that will resolve both problems. So the four solution options being proposed by the code manager are: MAPs can use the Electricity Inquiry Service, or EES API, to get these data items. MAPs are provided with a regular portfolio extract of their whole portfolio from EES. MAPs are provided with a regular extract from EES of their MHHS metering points only, or looking at updating the D303 flow to add the import-export flag, which would only resolve I0261, so we'd need to look at one of the other solution options for I0230 as well. More information on these solution options and their pros and cons can be found in the Solution Development Report, which is published on the portal pages for both of these issues. And that Solution Development Report also contains details of 3 other solution options that have been considered and de-scoped by the Code Manager.
All right, great. I wonder if you could give me some more information about why those issues were de-scoped, the ones that you've taken out of consideration for this change.
So one of the options was very similar to one of the options that we are looking at progressing, in that maps could use the EES API to get access to these data items, but it contained a restriction that they would only do so on receipt of a D303 flow to attempt to lessen the burden on the API. But we've de-scoped this as there's no way to enforce that. Another looked at developing a brand new tool to allow maps access to these data items, but that's been de-scoped due to likely having high costs and long timescales associated with it, and these are issues that maps are seeing today that we would like to resolve as soon as we can. It also didn't feel appropriate to develop something brand new when we have solution options that utilise tools that exist today. The last looked at making amendments to the IF36 DIP flow to give mowers access to the supplier registration date again and allow them to populate that in the D303 flow again. This has been de-scoped specifically as a REC solution because that flow is owned by the Balancing and Settlement Code, so a change would need to be raised to them if that was an option parties were interested in progressing.
All right, thanks, Caroline. Tell me then, how can stakeholders feed into these solutions at this time and provide their thoughts?
So we've launched an information request. That was opened on the 7th of November and it's going to be open for 4 weeks, closing on Friday the 5th of December. We're asking any maps or mowers interested in these issues to respond, not only with what their preferred solution option is, but also to tell us if there are any other solution options they can think of that the code manager hasn't considered. And it will also allow parties to feed back if they agree that the options that we've de-scoped should remain de-scoped, or if they have any reasons that they would like to see them developed further. To respond, parties can download the information request, the solution development report, and the response template from the information request portal page, and they can then either upload their response back onto the same page or email it into the change management team. And like all REC information requests, impact assessments and consultations, they can choose whether they want their response or part of their response to be anonymous or confidential. And more information about what anonymous and confidential means within the REC is inside the information request response template. We have also held a Q&A session on Wednesday the 19th of November for maps and mowers to ask any questions on the proposed solutions that they have before they feed back more formally via the information request. And I did just want to say a quick thank you to the community and meter asset providers for their help in reaching a wider audience of maps for this.
Well, thank you very much, Caroline, lead change analyst for issues I0230 and I0261. I hope you get a swathe of useful responses from your information requests off the back of this podcast. Thank you for keeping us all informed about this very interesting process and information request today. But that's all we have time for on today's podcast. If you have any feedback or questions on today's episode, please do drop us a line to inquiries@repmanager.co.uk. We'll see you on the next one. Thank you and goodbye.